Terre'blanche, a man who for many is the embodiment of all that was despicable about South Africa's apartheid era. The founder of the white supremacist group, the Afrikaner resistance movement, Terre'blanche was sentenced to 7 years in prison in 1997 for attempted murder. Little has been heard from him since, and in the modern-day multicultural South Africa, his views seem utterly irrelevant. But according to Terre'blanche, he is on the verge of an unlikely comeback.
I'm going to cross the Rubicon. That means war.
In recent years, the optimism that greeted the birth of the so-called Rainbow Nation has begun to fade. In cities such as Johannesburg, rising crime levels and economic problems are matters of huge concern. But out in the countryside, Afrikaner communities say they have a more pressing problem: land, after the ANC government announced plans to reform land ownership laws. And Terre'blanche is hoping to capitalize on the community's fears by rallying his dwindling band of supporters into action.
Man, as ek nou hier deur my dagboek gaan sien, ek het 16, 17 openbare vergaderings al gehou hierdie jaar. Groot vergaderings, min publisiteit. Dis asof die pers huiwerig is om te sê hier kom dit.
Pitskit Rudolph was one of the founders of the Afrikaner resistance movement with Eugene Terre'blanche. He's been arrested more times than any other for activities ranging from plotting to assassinate President de Klerk to stealing a truckload of weaponry from a military base.
You see, the last time that I was imprisoned, it was actually the 14th time that I was arrested and detained. My wife said to me, "This child of yours is in a terrible state. You'll have to speak to her." I couldn't find words to express myself, so I decided to make this simple drawing. I said to her, "Do you see that? That is the bars of a prison cell, and do you see the face at the back? That is your papa you are crying for." I said, "But do you know there's a connection between this page and that page? And here you can still see that I am in prison, but do you see my smile? Do you know why I want to be in prison? For freedom. I've written it there, vryheid, freedom. Freedom for my people, freedom for my country, and ultimately to hoist our own flag again." And my belief, going there, I go with my Bible, unfortunately without a rifle.
The fact that Terre'blanche and his followers have been widely ignored perhaps indicates that to the vast majority of South Africans, they are just an uncomfortable reminder of darker times. And to the wider world, it is assumed that extreme right-wing South Africans are a thing of the past. In terms of political influence, this may be true, but they have certainly not gone away. The so-called Boeramag, or Boer Force Group, gained notoriety in 2002, when they conducted a bombing campaign in Soweto. Amongst the 23 men originally charged for acts of treason, sabotage, and terrorism are a physician and his 3 sons. Though his boys still remain behind bars, Dr. Johan Letts Pretorius has since been freed on bail. But the experience has done nothing to soften his views, nor those of his wife.
These women will continue to raise sons who will live and fight for the Boer independence, and who will win it and keep it in the end. Dis ek Kobus se vroukie, hy en sy is geskei. Dis Johan en sy vroukie.
En dis Johan?
Ja.
Wat kinders het?
As a family, we have been chosen by God to walk this very difficult road. Despite all the sufferings and sacrifices, there is no alternative. Until that day when the vierkleur will wave again.
In the late 1800s, the stage for war was set when gold was discovered in the sovereign Boer republics. The British aggressors, with their more traditional tactics, could not subdue the Boers, who were the originators of guerrilla warfare. In a desperate move, the British razed Afrikaner farms to the ground and placed those that remained in the world's first concentration camps. The white right clings to this history with as much bitterness as if it happened yesterday.
I want to tell you today that the circumstances in this country will never be the same again unless the Boerevolk gets its freedom. All people that want to become free eventually succeeds. But on the way, if you don't get to a table early, a lot of blood can flow. It's much better to go to the table now, before the blood starts to flow.
Ja, die boere is gebore met God se woord in die een hand en die geweer in die ander hand, en waarna dit ook verwys is die feit dat ons moes nog altyd veg vir ons vryheid, maar ons kon dit nie sonder God se woord gedoen het nie.
The old guard of white supremacists may have largely faded from view, but their views on race have been taken up by a new generation, some of whom are students at a conservative, predominantly white university in the town of Potchefstroom.
Daar's een ding wat vir ons uiters belangrik is, dit is eerstens ons geloof en dan daarna ons taal en kultuur. As ek 'n ander geloof akkommodeer, dan is dit net so goed ek gaan lees sy God se woord en dan is my hele karakter as Christen daarmee heen. So nee, wat daar's nie plek vir 'n ander geloof wat my aanbetref nie.
Nou die klomp jong mense daar van Potchefstroom is 'n klomp baie oulike mense. Ek dink hulle is boere in Laarte. Hulle is onlangs is hulle organisasie verband van Potchefstroom se kampus af en onwettig verklaar. So dit sê net vir my een ding en dis hulle is op die regte pad.
As integrasie en al die goeders dan nou regtig reg was, hoekom is die hele land, die hele wêreld nie al uitgebaster nie?
Daar's die natuur 'n wonderlike voorbeeld. Ons het 'n jagluiperd en ons het 'n leeu. Albei is van die katfamilie, maar is hulle in dieselfde gebied? Dis dieselfde soos met ons. Ons is nie gemaak om te meng nie. Ons is nie, dis natuurlik verkeerd. Gee ons net ons spasie.
Wat is 'n volk dan sodra jy vermeng, dan het jy nie meer kultuur nie. Ten spyte van die aanslag is dis eintlik goed al hierdie goeders gebeur, want nou is daar geleentheid om onsself net nog meer suiwerder te maak.
Not exactly keen supporters, it would seem, of the Rainbow Nation. But how much of a threat are they really?
Soos byvoorbeeld op ons bittereinder gedenk aan waar soos die pamfletjie nou of die ja, dit sal ons in elk geval altyd bybly. Dit is nou aan die einde van die boereoorlog het die boere ook dit gesê. Ons is gewond maar onoorwonde en die stryd hier voort.
I don't take white youngsters seriously when they threaten revolution. They get that from their parents.
My oupa het 'n plaas. So ek het meestal maar op die plaas soos groot geword en my oupa is ook groot deel van my lewe. Hy het vir my baie hy is my rolmodel.
The minute they start working, then their reality changes. They go to mostly white schools, they go to mostly white universities, they cling to their family home, and the minute they go into the wide world and they work with black people and they see the reality, then those kind of things fall away. I don't think there is a need, an overwhelming need of Afrikaners to re-establish their cultural identity. There is no such a thing. There's a language and there's a history. We don't have a culture.
Max du Preez is a seasoned journalist who once ran the nation's only Afrikaans anti-apartheid newspaper. As such, he is well qualified to provide some perspective on the Boer people.
People paint the picture of the bearded Boer with the rifle and the Bible and talk about freedom and independence because it was historically true. And I felt that too. I always felt that the one thing that said to me that I am an Afrikaner was that I loved freedom. I yearned for freedom, which is why I joined the struggle against apartheid, because I wasn't free. And after 1994, I got my freedom. I am free now. I say things about this government and this president that we have now, that if I had said that before 1990, which I did, they blew up my office and they blew up my car and they put me in jail. I am free now. Not extremely happy, but free.
Let me therefore make this abundantly clear.
Nelson Mandela, when he took over as president, changed the entire political atmosphere also for white people. And I've met many AWB right-wing fascist Afrikaner nationalists who became Mandela disciples just by the way he led and the way he promised a new future. And most importantly, the way he took their perceived threat of black majority rule away. At the same time, the sweetness with which Afrikaners viewed this republic after 94 is completely gone.
It seems indisputable that South Africa is currently in the midst of a crime epidemic, with carjackings and armed robberies becoming all too common, and the authorities seemingly powerless to intervene.
I know that all South Africans are very concerned about the levels of crime in the country, and so it's natural that people, because it has happened in the new dispensation, that it may be associated with a change in racial relations. But I know black people who feel as threatened, so I don't think it's Afrikaners only. What Afrikaners have experienced specifically is the very high level of murders of farmers. We have a murder rate of 50 people per day here in South Africa. The farming murder rate's about 8 times higher. I, in this district, have known 9 people to have been murdered since 1994, people I've known personally. It is absolutely natural that people will respond in a very negative fashion.
Magdalene, kom maar. Ek luister vir jou. Ek was nou patrollie doen hier so in Ermelo Wes omgewing, hoor. Baie dankie, dis alles reg so. Rapporteer maar.
For centuries, South Africa's rural communities have been protected by the commando system. Yet this system of voluntary civilian law enforcers is being phased out because, perhaps understandably, the government fears that an estimated 70,000 white men with guns could create unease.
Good evening, lady. Is it possible to see your license and registration?
Despite government attempts to end the commando system, though, some locals continue to quite literally take the law into their own hands.
What's your business of your visit?
Is the hinterland becoming more dangerous?
I think so, because it's not densely populated anymore.
Are people selling out, or are they just leaving because of fear?
Selling out, fear, the policy around agricultural in South Africa.
There's a farmer near us, Bertie, as you came from Bertie. Now he sold out after 12-day threats that he had in a short, very short, suddenly. They just phoned him and started threatening. And now his brother was cross with him because he sold his farm. But now his brother is also going to sell and leave. That's now in my area. We were 7 active members in our farm watch, but now we're only 2 left.
Was that a shotgun? Why do you stay here? It's dangerous? You don't have subsidies?
It's lovely. You can't take this sunrise and this sunset. You can't change that for anything in the world.
No, here Australia is pretty nice this time of year.
People see it as a form of ethnic cleansing, an attack on our land. And it's not true. I think the police in South Africa are useless. But they're not more useless to whites than to blacks. They're just generally good for nothing.
The 2,000 plus farm murders since 1994 make farming in South Africa one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. But this statistic is not the only reason Afrikaners get hot-blooded over the issue of land.
There's this very emotional feeling about the Afrikaners and the soil. A lot of black people say the same thing, their ancestors live on the ground, but all, white and black, have been attracted by urbanization and the bright lights of the cities. So it's as if they can overcome this feeling, which I don't say it doesn't exist, but it is not so strong that it's going to keep people on the land.
But Terre'blanche insists that he's going nowhere.
Dis my liefling ma. Die is my helse pa. My pa was net so sterk soos die rots. My pa het altyd gesê, jy moenie vir my 'n kopklipie maak nie. Gehaal vir my daai die berge, graniet so gebring. My pa was die natuurlike leier van hierdie omgewing. Hy was ook die kommandant van die kommando's. Hier is my pa se monument. Jy sien, ek kan nooit as vreemdelinge dit wil koop. Of dat Franse of Duitsers of Amerikaners of Tswanas of Sotos is. En hulle kom na my plaas en sê, ek vat nou jou plaas. Teen die prys wat die minister bepaal. Ek verkoop nie die grond nie. Die grond is nie in die mark. Die grond as die Terre'blanche is. En hy bly so vir altyd. Geen mag op aarde sal het vat nie.
They won't shed their last drop of blood. One or two may, but the Afrikaner as a whole may not, because a lot of the Afrikaners are living in London at this stage, or they're living in Australia. They're not living here. So they quite clearly are not willing to do that. They're willing to explore a new, open, globalized world. And it's true for even the Afrikaners on the land here. Clearly they want to farm, but they sell all the time.
Yet many farmers who have remained feel they are facing attacks on two fronts, from land reformists and from criminals. For members of the Transvaal Agricultural Union, these twin concerns have become obsessions.
Goed, ek wil net vra, is daar enige nuwe sake by punt 6? Dit gaan oor die eiendomsreg, is daar iets wat ons moet aanvul hierby?
Gaan kyk wat is die implikasies van hierdie onteieningswet. Dit is die grootste ingreep op beleggersvertroue wat jy seker kan kry. Ons sit met baie harde realiteite in Suid-Afrika en ons kan dit nie wegwens nie. Dit is daar. Dit is in Afrika, dit is besig om in wyeer gedeeltes van Afrika te gebeur, maar ook in Suid-Afrika. En ek wil dit saamvat met 'n begrip, 'n Afrika realiteit. Dit gaan oor mag en oor verryking van myself en hulle voel 'n veer vir hulle onderdane. En die ANC se beleid soos hy nou uitgespeel word, sal vir Suid-Afrika hongersnood bring uiteindelik. Ek is nie besig om mense swart te smeer nie. Hulle smeer hulle self swart. Die werklikheid praat. Dis mense wat net eenvoudig nie presteer nie. En dit is die realiteit van Afrika.
I think right-wing Afrikaners are an African reality. There are many examples of stroppy tribes in Africa who behave exactly like they do. And in a sense, right-wing Afrikaners have become a stroppy African tribe who've been overthrown from power and they're now mumbling in the shadows instead of accepting.
They're contributing to it themselves by the way that they view the future. Instead of actually building, they're standing there and they're saying, I told you so.
What we need is for a new leadership in civil society and in government to come forward and say, well, let's join these realities.
As much as it was brought on by Mbeki's approach to white people, it can be changed by somebody whose approach is more like Tutu or Zuma, who gives more credit and more recognition to Afrikaners than Mbeki was willing to do.
Jacob Zuma, leader of the ANC and favourite to be South Africa's next president, is a controversial figure who has faced numerous criminal charges. But even in the midst of all his problems, he has recently attempted to engage with the historical enemy.
Afrikaners have played a very specific role in shaping the history of this country. Whether aspects of it people like it or not, they're an important group to interact with, to help bring harmony and stability in the country.
If you have a special skill as a farmer or as an entrepreneur, we want you, with your special skills, to come and make life better for the majority, you included. I think it is that easy for this government.
And I believe if we interact, if we talk, we'll discover that in fact we have so much in common. Utilize your skills to help others, and you can move forward and build our country.
Some Afrikaners are keen to join the police force as reservists. In the meantime, people like Werner Seltzer are busy practicing a somewhat extreme form of self-defense.
We had meetings now 2 weeks ago with the head of the reservists to just say, please, we want to join. And that guy, okay, his attitude was positive. But yes, if they say, listen guys, come and join, and they are fair. If a perpetrator comes to kill me and I kill him first, they don't want to lock me up for it. They look over the situation from all sides and they are consequent. Yeah, then we will be positive. But now, like what happened in the West Transvaal, that guy shot two guys, was busy breaking his bedroom door down, and he shot them through the door because, I mean, if a guy breaks down your door, he's not coming for a visit. And now Kusatu says, no, they must lock him up because he's a racist. How could he know it was two black guys on the other side of the door?
But for Seltzer, issues of race and crime are indivisible.
It is racial. If It weren't like that. There would have been plenty of reasons to be positive.
I think the worst thing you can do to an Afrikaner is call him something like a colonialist or a settler, because there's not much to Afrikaans culture. There's not much that makes us different, but history, and we regard ourselves as indigenous people, because we're from mixed blood. We're a bastard people, and we're from here. We're indigenous. I'm an African. We're the only people who call ourselves by the name of the continent. Eugene Terre'blanche, mad caricature that he is an African. He would be so out of place in Europe.
Yet, in modern-day South Africa, Terre'blanche also appears to be completely out of place.
It passes. For how can a man die better? Facing fearful odds. For the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods. If they are going to take my land, I'm going to cross the Rubicon. And that means war.